How's it going, Ben?
Good. Yeah,
Good.
yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, because you came out to New York and then headed on to Canada.
Yeah. So that
Yeah,
was
for
yeah, that was a great trip. I had so much fun. In Canada, I was in British Columbia on the island of Victoria.
yeah.
It was amazing. It was so beautiful, and I've met people that I got along really well with them. Like it's more as a group we worked pretty well. It felt like when you're a kid and you go to camp or I don't know, like on a weekend or something, and you meet other kids, and then when you by the time you leave, then you feel like you've made best friends with other people.
Yeah, like summer camp.
Yeah, except it was over 3 or 4 days or something like that. So
And
yeah, no, that was great. And it was great seeing you too.
yeah, agreed. No, we had a lot of fun. Um,
Yeah.
and uh, yeah, I think because what days were you there again? You were there in July, right?
Yeah, I was there from July. I don't know which. I basically I was there for 2 weeks, and I came back late. Now I was supposed to come back on Sam's birthday, but actually, I got stuck in Canada for a stupid reason. Like some type of airport thing that delayed my
Okay.
flight, so I missed my connecting flight. And then so I stayed there for a night. So I went to Paris the next day, and I was supposed to catch a train. Then my train got canceled, but it was there was a lot of it's the very middle of the summer, the Olympics. So I was unable to get a train for 2 days. So
Oh
I stayed
shit.
over at Arno's apartment for 2 days, but I was completely tired and jet lagged, so I didn't really enjoy my stay there. I went to the Louvre like for maybe a couple hours, and then I just stayed in and chilled.
Cool. Well, it was good
Yeah,
you have friends, so to
yeah,
stay with. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Because the thing is, I just moved. I had moved away from Paris early July, so being stuck in Paris, um, it felt like it felt like I hadn't moved.
And wait, does Arno live in your neighborhood? Your former neighborhood? He doesn't exactly live.
No, no, no,
No. Yeah.
no, no. He lives a little far away,
Okay.
but I know his neighborhood pretty well, so it felt good.
Cool.
I felt at home, except that I had no home.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get
and
it.
so I was back basically early August, and yeah, and I didn't tell you that, but Sam and I are gonna buy a house.
I think you did. Oh, well, I think you said you were talking about it, but I didn't know that you had found a place. Have
Yeah,
you found a place?
yeah, we'd made an offer, but the thing is we couldn't afford to offer the asking price.
Mm.
So we made a lower offer, and I didn't expect them to agree. But actually, so when I gave them the offer, they turned it down right away over the phone. And then I said, okay, maybe I'll come back with a better offer. And then during my trip in the US and Canada, I decided that, I mean, I didn't decide, it's just there was no way we could offer a little more. It would have been too complicated. So I called the guy and said, hey, I'm sorry for, not having called, because I left like a 2 week gap in between the two calls. I said, yeah, I'm sorry, it's not gonna happen. We can't come back with a better offer, so that's what it is. Then I went through all the hurdles, like the plane canceled, the train canceled, and that stuff. So then I arrive at Arno's place. I crash in the bed. I have a 4 hour nap from like 4 to 8 p.m.
And then you woke up
So
and you were like, "Where am I?"
Yeah. And then that guy calls me when I was asleep, so I call him back. It was a known number, so I call him back. Oh no, we left a message or something. And then he's like, "Hey, by the way, we're gonna agree on your offer." I was like, "What?" Completely tired, exhausted, jet lagged. I was like, "Whoa, shit! Now I think I'm buying a house."
So is it in Manosque or
Yeah,
cool?
yeah, it's in Manosque. It's it's located at the foot of a hill. It's really secluded. It's really nice. It's way cheaper than the market price, but there's some works that need to be done. But it's really cute. Yeah, we have a nice piece of land, and the house is a little old, but it's got enough rooms. It's big too, so we are able to have rooms for Sam's parents and my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law and their kid. So
That's awesome.
that's all we wanted. Yeah, it's great. We're really happy about that.
When do you move in?
Next week,
Oh,
actually.
seriously?
Yeah. Wait, yeah. The 22nd. No, we signed the final signature is on the 22nd. So we'll move in on the 23rd or something.
Awesome. Well, congratulations.
Yeah,
It's a big step.
thanks. Yeah, I'm just relieved. I like the house, so that's good. Yeah, yeah, and now you can come over whenever you want.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, by the way, you're in between moving houses too, no? When
Yeah.
what are your plans? Because you told me you would graduate or you would finish your PhD right about December or something like that. So
Yeah, so I am finishing this year. But the way I'm like applying for jobs right now,
yeah.
and that process continues through spring. So it made more sense for me to, because I'd been thinking initially about finishing my dissertation for December, but I was able to get a fellowship for the spring.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm gonna do the job market, finish my dissertation, and then hopefully be in New York for most of the spring, but I'll still technically have student status, so and an
Okay.
income from the university, so that'll be kind of nice.
That's cool.
Yeah. Um, but yes, and I also did just move. I came back to Madison in the middle of August and spent a couple days with my very passive aggressive former landlord in his house because the reason I had to move out was that he was taking the house back and moving in, and he was really upset that my lease was not over when he wanted to move in. Um, so yeah. But now I'm in my new place. It's kind of like the first place I lived in Madison, except slightly nicer. But you remember that.
Yeah, yeah, I do. Is
Yeah.
there the same partying going
No,
on or
there's
something
not.
like that?
No.
The sticky floors?
um, no, it's a house with like 6 different people in it. All the rooms are rented
Oh yeah.
separately, um, and it's pretty cheap. But it's a nicer house, and the people are nicer. So
Okay, that's great.
yeah. So it's a good place to end my time in Madison, I would say.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, yeah. Oh, what are your plans over Christmas?
I'm actually not sure yet. I am kind of working out with um I'm talking with Andy. He's not sure if he's gonna go back home or what he's gonna do. And yeah, I haven't made plans, but why?
Sam and I are going to, we'll be in Wisconsin
Oh, awesome. Yeah,
for 2 weeks.
if
So
I'm here, yeah, I would love to see you guys. So
yeah, I don't know when you go, what you would do, but since this year, my school vacations start very close to Christmas, and I think we leave on January 5th or something like that.
okay.
So I don't know if you're around or something. It would be
No,
nice
yeah, I would
just
love to see
to.
you. Um Yeah, because I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be in Madison at some point during that time. So
Yeah. I don't know if you would drive to your parents or fly to New York or something like that.
yeah, like I
But yeah,
said, I'm
we
not sure
can.
yet. So, but we'll
Yeah,
stay in touch about it.
yeah, definitely. How is life in Madison?
It's pretty good. There's still some familiar faces that you would probably remember from when you were here. Pete and Charles
Oh yeah, nice.
and then yeah, maybe that's it. But the town I don't think has changed very much, and there's just a new batch of people every year, and
Yeah.
I'm starting to yeah, feel old and be happy that it's my last year. So, but Madison, yeah, it's great. I mean, it's fall time. The weather is awesome. Uh, and I don't know, I live where I live, it's about a 45-minute walk to work, which is kind of long, but I like doing it in the morning. So, um,
What area are you in?
I'm on Willie Street.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, it's a pretty nice walk.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. You walk past the Capitol, up State Street, over the
Yeah.
hill. So, yeah, I've enjoyed that.
Yeah,
But
nice.
are you teaching right now?
Yeah. Yeah, I started at my new school
Okay.
and things are going pretty well. In the beginning, I thought I had like an odd relationship with the students. I didn't know if they didn't trust me or something like that. And then I just realized that when you get to a new school, the students don't know who you are. They don't know how you act and things like that, and so it creates like a weird moment where you both on both sides you're trying to figure out the other side thoughts and but it's getting really it's getting to be the relationship is getting good right now. There is trust. There is um, they listen more or less,
Good.
so it's good. And yeah, it's so nice to have students because since I'm from Manosque and I was born here and I grew up here. Now when I talk to the students, they actually live here, in all the little cities that I know. So it creates a nice sense of like homeness sort of thing when I hear them talk about places and things that I know and that I've been to and there's a way to relate to that is really enjoyable. It wasn't the case before because I didn't where I lived. I felt more like of a stranger somehow, and now it doesn't feel this way. Now it feels good. I mean, I really loved being in Le Bourget before, but I felt more like an outsider. Whereas
Yeah.
here, I'm an insider.
And you said you have colleagues that were your teachers in the past.
Yeah, yeah. I there was there was and that's so funny because it's in link with the podcast too. Is the teacher who turned me on to reading was my French teacher that I had when I was 16. And I mean, I had started reading books like fantasy or something like that. And I think I started writing. And that teacher is so funny. She's a little bit eccentric and at the same time really um, she likes to put you on the spot a lot and like to push you outside of your boundaries. And I had written a story about like a fantasy story or something like that, some kind of adventure thing, and I wanted her to read it. And she was really into realistic literature, like one of her favorite writer is Philip Roth. I
Okay.
don't know if you
Yeah.
ever read anything from him. And so when I read when I had her read my story, she was like, "It's great that you're writing, but why do you write that fantasy crap? Just write about reality or something." And then she gave me she gave me a reading advice. She told me that American literature was great. And then I started reading American literature. I didn't understand anything. I was really like, what the fuck is that about?
You mean you were reading it in English or in
In French.
in French? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, at the time, no, I think I hadn't read anything in English. Or maybe some Harry Potter book or something like that. But yeah, and so now I knew she worked in this high school, and I was like, that's gonna be interesting when I'm gonna see her again. And then and the relationship just resumed. She was like, "Wow, I'm so happy to see you, blah blah blah. You look great," and then like we just we sat down and we started talking about literature. It was as if there was no like the 20-year gap was bridged, like we as soon as we saw each other, it was like, yeah, so wow, you must have read so much by now. What are you reading? And then I'm like, yeah, and what are you into? Something like that. But more on of course on more on an equal footing. So yeah, that was great.
Cool. Well, that sounds like you're in a good place.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm happy about that. Yeah, do you wanna move on to talking
Yeah.
about the book? All
Yeah.
right. So this podcast book is Le Voyageur Imprudent. How would you say imprudent in English?
I mean,
Careless?
there's imprudent is a word, but
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't. I think the translation in English is actually the name of the substance, like this paint substance that is used to travel through time.
Yeah.
I think it's like the Noahlight 3 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like just a totally different title in English. Because I don't, imprudent is kind of there's probably a more colloquial term for that, but it didn't translate well. But I really like the title of this book, so I think I actually read this for the first time, like maybe, I think it was probably the first time I had come to France. We like went to Paris and they had all of the booksellers along the river. And
Yeah.
I think I bought that. And I'd heard of it before because I had kind of sought out like French science fiction type novels. Or I'd, read like Jules Verne and things at that point, but I'd kind of done some research and
Yeah.
knew that was an author that I thought would be interesting. And yeah, so that's where I read it for the first time. And then I've been thinking about it recently, I think, just, well, because it had been like a while. And then there was like a TV movie adaptation of this book from like the 1980s that I actually found on YouTube, and I thought it was actually pretty good. But it leaves a lot of kind of my favorite parts out of the novel, so I kind of wanted to go and visit it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because it's a made-for-TV movie, so they cut out the flash forward 100,000 years.
Really?
Yeah, that whole kind of
That's
surreal section of the novel.
Yeah.
But yeah, so oh, sorry.
I feel it could be a nice. I feel like it could be a nice two-parter, like twice 1.5 hour, made for TV movie,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean
or
it's
maybe a
like
long, like a long 2.5 hours or something.
um and then this book is
Yeah.
also a
So yeah,
sequel of sorts. Had you heard of
I
René
see.
Barjavel?
I know René Barjavel because of his book Ravage,
Yes.
and this one is a staple of post-war, I guess, French science fiction novels, where I mean the story basically is uh I think it's in today's world. Have you read Ravage? Maybe it's
Hmm.
better that you talk about it because I haven't read it. I just know the story briefly. But I know that what's interesting about Barjavel is that, as opposed to Jules Verne, for example, where the sci-fi, the pre-war sci-fi was for a lot of stories was sci-fi that is set up. The science it relies on is a science um, that is more that makes sense, quote unquote. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it's a scientific world. It's a world that comes out of the darkness of tradition, darkness of old think, and thanks to science, you can at last make sense of the world, and then there's progress and scientific progress and political progress go hand in hand somehow.
Hmm.
Whereas the post-war sci-fi is more
Darker.
yeah, it's darker, it's more esoteric as well, and yeah, I mean we'll talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, you can maybe just talk about Barjavel and Ravage that you know more than me.
Yeah, so Ravage takes place in the near future. Um, well, it's it takes place in Paris in like 100 years from the present, so it's quite futuristic, kind of in a conventional way with like flying cars and skyscrapers and um, but one day uh for some unexplained reason electricity stops functioning, so the whole society like falls apart, and they're sort of like um gangs of former Parisians who are grouping together and trying to form a new society on the outskirts of Paris or in the countryside, where they can because in this kind of automated society they had machines that would produce their food, that would do everything for them, and so they kind of have to relearn being human. So
Yeah,
um and that's kind of one thing about Barjavel. I mean, that novel is, I think it has a lot of really, great images and or memorable images. I don't really know exactly what his politics are, but he has had a reputation as being, I don't know if like extreme right wing, but he is very, opposed to I would say reactionary, kind of opposed to progress and the elitism of cities and the people that live there. So that you can kind of read that between the lines of something like Ravage. But yeah, I mean the Voyageur Imprudent is also, I don't know that it's a sequel per se, but the events of Ravage are mentioned in the novel as being part of the future timeline, because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the Voyageur Imprudent takes place, or it begins during World War II. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, so that one is more contemporary to the author writing. But the other thing I would say, or because I thought um, the way that you situated him was interesting, or accurate, this being like a sci-fi that is in a darker mode and like less optimistic. And then talking about Jules Verne as well. One thing that I thought is sort of interesting in terms of that question of like realism is that Jules Verne was all about traveling. Like there was a lot of technology, but most of it had to do with like technology of traveling through space. Like the, 80 days in a balloon or like around the world in 80
Yeah,
days or, 20,000 leagues under the sea. So it's all these kind of technologies of like travel through space. And the other thing, not other than like the wars that occurred at the beginning of the century is just that, the globe had been discovered entirely. So there was nothing new to, nowhere really to go. And so that's actually that's one theory of like, where these time travel narratives came from, that we had discovered all of space, like all of Earth,
yeah,
and so how can you continue to travel? It would be through time. And that was so yeah, it's like less like credible, I guess, but it's also, I think, responding to something. um
yeah. It's less credible, and at the same time, I think it's also more enjoyable because one thing I read, for example, is that it was René Barjavel, the author, he was connected to some guy who was both into science and both into some kind of esoteric New Age religion,
okay.
something like that. I don't know if you know about Theosophism or Theosophy. It's something I don't remember that it's that precisely, but it's something like that. Something
Okay.
like technology is powerful and they believe in science and all that kind of thing, but at the same time they believe that science will reveal the power of the mind and connection to unknown worlds and that kind of thing. And I think that's that kind of way of thinking is really prevalent among people in the right or the extreme right, where there's this sort of belief that that there is the material world, there's science that can explain it, but at the same time they hang on to the possibility of still having not of this. I mean, I don't know how to say it, but like beliefs in maybe not magical things, but unexplainable things, or things that could be explained, but are still a little bit esoteric.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, the one thing I'm thinking about is Joe Rogan. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see, that guy, is I I wouldn't say he's far right, but is the type of guy who says is not right nor left, but has right wing politics. Like he wants anyway, it doesn't matter. But this guy believes that, for example, mushrooms and LSD and things that get you to hallucinate opens up your mind to a world where everything is connected and something like that. And it felt a little bit like that in Le Voyageur Imprudent,
Hey man,
where
can you hold on just
we
one
ha-
second?
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah. Anyway, the point I was trying to make is that people like that usually are pretty good at showing how the sort of overly optimistic and the people who have the opinion overly optimistic science quote unquote believer, or people who believe that scientific progress will solve all our problems, are themselves a little bit deluded.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
they fall into and they fall prey to their own to the shortcomings of this way of reasoning. And so that's why I enjoyed this aspect of the book, where there's a lot of funny moments or ironic moments. It's a little bit of a satire
Oh
on
yeah.
that part, and so yeah, I think that's good. I like it. I really like too. I enjoy like Jules Verne's type stories, but it's good. It's refreshing when you have somebody who has like the bleak, dark point of view, where it's like your scientific world is bullshit. There's
Yeah.
stronger forces out there, and so yeah, I thought it was a good book in this way.
Yeah, and I mean Jules Verne isn't satirical at all,
Yeah,
or caricatural, because there are well, I guess we can talk a little bit about what the book is about,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but yeah, there's definitely some surreal parts in it, I would say. Some things that kind of remind you of like even like Gulliver's Travels, um, maybe some yeah, kind of allegorical elements, which is definitely something Jules Verne doesn't
yeah.
do. He's very concrete. Um, but yeah, so the uh book begins during World War II in what is the region that it takes place in actually?
I don't remember, but I really love the opening paragraph.
Mm,
It says, I'll quote it really quick, and I just
go
want
ahead.
to stop here. Il faisait un froid de guerre. Au petit matin, le sergent Mostet découvrait un soldat, demi-nu, tordu en travers des feuillets. Le gel qui montait de la neige l'avait empoigné à mort. Ses cuisses sonnaient aux doigts comme des planches. 4 hommes l'emportèrent. Celui qui le prit par la tête lui cassa les oreilles. And the way he writes, and what is weird is that it's not always like that, but the way he writes is really short sentences that
Mm,
are very they have a concrete aspect to them, very sensitory aspect. So for example, he says ses cuisses, so his thighs, rang on the finger like planks. So you have both this the touch and the sound
oh yeah.
of the thighs, which are not supposed to be hard like planks. Of course, they're supposed to be squishy, and so right from the beginning, you're in this bleak atmosphere of war. You know, it's war. Some guy just died in the night in the snow or something like that, and people moved the body and they broke his pieces of his ears and they touch his his body, and his body is no longer like human. It's already an object, or at least material, and
Mm,
and and it's like that in most parts of the movie where his descriptions are really concrete, a little bit metaphorical sometimes. It's very very poetic. Not all the times though. I don't know if you realize that, but sometimes it's kind of a little bit bland, I would say.
yeah, I mean I don't think uh um yeah, no, I would say that. I think you describe his style pretty well. Um because I also the thing that's kind of unsettling about his books for me is that, or this one in particular maybe, that you get the sense it's for a younger audience sometimes in the way that it's written, and then there's also these really grotesque images like well, I mean this image that you've just evoked, but it gets quite gory in places and quite so yeah, that's why I think he's the kind of writer that I'm I guess I've paid less attention to his like writing style than just the memorable kind of images he puts in your mind, things like that, or um there's sort of a restaging of Guernica. Um uh well, so the novel continues, and the main character um uh stumbles is walking through the forest and stumbles, or he's part of a battalion, but he stumbles into the home of a professor and his granddaughter, who live in this house in the forest, and he has developed this substance called noelite that can be used in various ways to stop time or to allow you to travel through time. And so he ends up staying with the professor and his daughter, who he's attracted to, and traveling, helping the professor to develop this technology that allows you to travel through time wearing a scaphandre, a diving suit, painted with this noelite material. And so he travels to different periods of time. Notably, there's a long sequence that I think is sort of inspired by H.G. Wells' Time Machine, but he goes very far in the future, to a period where humans have become so specialized in their tasks that they are reduced to there are castes essentially where each one has become a single organ. So there's a mouth and like a teat and ears that are human-sized but perform a single function and are also mindless.
Yeah.
And then the book is also famous for its ending because the lead character ends up killing his grandfather, causing his grandfather to not exist, causing him to not be born. So there's a time paradox that occurs at the end of the novel that was the first. I think that's kind of one of the novel's claims to fame, that it invented the temporal paradox. But
I also, it was so beautifully made, because it's really well foreshadowed.
Yeah.
Where you have you know what's gonna happen, you suspect it, and then there's a couple of elements, and then it unravels, and then you're like, wow, that was really enjoyable, an ending, because it's sad, it's pathetic, but at the same time it wraps up the loop pretty well.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
No, I agree.
So it's a time travel story where the guy travels with diving suit, and and so one of the points that are a little bit funny too is that he doesn't delve too much into the details of how things work,
No.
Like the guy who creates the noelite is a physicist, and basically he was able to invent that thanks to physics, but also thanks to articles that the main character wrote in the past, and these articles were useful for the scientists to create this time traveling matter, or like a material thingy. And but yeah, the fact that he has to wear a suit and there's buttons on it, but you don't need electricity as well. So there's this mechanical matter element in the time traveling thing that makes it a little bit strange, because you're thinking, how does that work really? There's button, so it feels very grounded in the 1950s, where it was clearly afraid about, not afraid, but it was clearly wary about technological progress, but there was maybe it was unaware of the first computers, or so it feels very mechanical.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's kind of a charming element to it.
Yeah. And
yeah, that is kind of interesting that, I think of, I don't know, time travel films in particular, but also some novels, I guess, that the actual event of time traveling is kind of really emphasized. Like there's like special effects and like something um it's kind of like a light show, I guess. And here it's kind
Yeah.
of it's a it's just a means to an end, I would say. I mean, it's like a device for
Yeah.
traveling in time, but it's not like a, you know. um yeah, so that's kind of interesting. And I think that's also because I saw the film of this fairly recently, and I'm sure as they were reading this novel, it occurred to them that you don't really need a lot of special effects to
Yeah.
do a lot of the suggest a lot of the things that are happening. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting part of it too, I would say, that it is kind of unassuming in a way. Did you have a favorite image or scene from the novel then?
I like some. So I read it in the ebook form, so I don't really have the pages. I mean, I pulled it up on my computer, but I couldn't find the funny passages that. I think one thing that I really enjoyed in the book is that it goes from seriousness to fun pretty quickly,
Oh yeah.
and the funny moments, the set pieces are they work really well. Um, Maybe there's once where there's like some kind of a misogynistic joke, which it felt definitely dated. But even the joke, even for the 1950s, the joke was not funny. You know, it's like oh yeah, the servant whatever is a woman, so yeah, she'll clean this up or something like that. But other than that, the other funny passages I thought were still pretty funny, very visual and very and really entertaining. And the passages that were more serious, um, they were also, I thought, pretty good. Even sometimes, you know, when it goes into the future
Hmm.
and you feel that what he's saying is basically that it's a commentary about how people are becoming specialized and are using their humanity or something like that. I thought this was not too heavy-handed, you know. And the vision of the future um, was a bit silly because it's not like that. It's not where we're going, but at the same time, it was not completely ridiculous or boring or anything like that.
No. Yeah, that whole part of the book like isn't, I don't think it's believable. Um, but I think it yeah, I don't know, it like balances the his like satirical aims, but it also you can't really reduce that part of the novel to like a satirical aim, because it is just you come away with it like remembering, or for me at least, having not read the novel for quite a while, I just had images in my head from that section of the novel that
Mm.
didn't necessarily mean anything to me, like as like a message about something, but
Yeah.
then just struck me. I think it was just the grotesque kind of like imagination. Um
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. The way it's conveyed, the figures you imagine, the people, it stays with you.
oh
You
yeah.
know, I'm still imagining that really large woman, the one what is she giving birth or something like that? And she has a head.
Yeah, well,
I
it's
don't
like
remember
a
exactly her function. It's like a teeth. That's what you said, right?
yeah. Yeah, I think
But with
that
a head
was
on top.
yes. But she so
Yeah, yeah.
if I'm remembering this part that you're talking about, the um so it's this giant body that I think is just attached to a teat, but there's like a
Yeah.
normal sized head on it. Um and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
uh it is not clear to what extent this woman is like conscious or like a human. and the professor at this moment has traveled back with the main character, Saint Manu,
Yeah.
and the professor takes the hair on the head and a knife, and he like
Yeah.
culls the head, and it turns out that this head was just basically like a wart or like a fleshy part of the body that doesn't have it was just like it looks like a head, but it
Yeah.
wasn't. So yeah, this thing is totally dehumanized. But also at that moment, the professor accidentally slices his suit open,
Yeah.
and so a slice of his body does not travel back to the present day, resulting in him being cut in half basically by the voyage back. So yeah, there's this kind of like I think that is speaks to what you were saying about the sudden leap from like comic to you know uh
Yeah.
well, like comic and serious, but also just like grotesque, and there's just these kind of like tonal shifts that are quite sudden. Because
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, even if it's a little bit gross, this scene with the woman is it's quite um kind of funny, I would say, just to imagine the situation. And then yeah, this the the scientist's death follows rather suddenly, um, and
Yeah, and
it's
also
quite bloody.
yeah, it's really bloody, and I thought it was gripping, and that's part of the social commentary that I think was best done. It's because you have the main character Saint Menu, who basically is hired by that scientist because the physicist is unable to move, is disabled and
Yeah.
obese, and so he can't really do the time traveling himself. So he has Saint Menu do that for him, and when Saint Menu goes to the future, he sees that woman being kind of thing, and so eventually, like you said, he brings Noel, the scientist, with him, along with him, and then that guy, the scientist, insists on trying to cut off the head just to see what it would do. And so at this time, you have Saint Manu go, uh, what are you doing that, you know? And the other guy goes the typical argument in science. Um, yeah, don't worry. Yes, okay, I might kill that thing, but there's a lot of things like that here, so it doesn't matter if I kill it. It's all for the progress of science. So it's perfectly fine if I do that. And his coldness um, really is highlighted by Saint Manu's uh, being distraught about what he's about to witness.
Oh yeah.
And so there's this kind of it's a little bit unsettling because you would expect, like in regular mainstream science fiction, you would expect somebody to prevent the guy from cutting the head, and here it's like, oh yeah, he cut the head and then it gets bloody and stuff, and so you're shocked by that. And the scene after, like a couple of paragraphs later, you see that actually that guy Noel dies, and so there's the payoff for what he I mean the payback for what he just did.
Hmm.
And that was a great moment. And then what happens is that Saint Manu does not stomach Noel's death, so he decides to travel back in time to prevent him from dying. And actually, that's when they both realize, especially the scientist, that he realizes that there are darker, stronger forces in the universe. And they talk about God, and then he decides to finally die, to be killed. And I thought that was, I mean, it was a little bit cliche because we see that quite often, you know, like in regular sci-fi. That's something that had echoes in stuff that I probably read or watched when I was a kid, you know, on TV or something like that. This aspect of science not being science being not weaker than God somehow. But everything that happens around that was really strong, really moving, and overall interesting. Like you said, the tonal shifts and the way he plays around the reader's expectations and what happens is pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, that's interesting that it's not something I'd really picked up on, I guess, but you've kind of been coming back to it. I don't know, like kind of the mix of like the fantastic or more fantasy elements and science fiction, and it seems like those fantasy elements are related to his skepticism toward science and progress and things. Yeah, because I mean that idea that once you've died, you can't so they're able to resuscitate the scientist by like changing the course of time. But he gets the sense that it has been decided that he will die at this moment and is somehow against nature to continue living. And there's this kind of weird, unscientific sense of what is natural that, it seems kind of, related to this author's kind of reactionary stance, I guess, but also, it just has this interesting flavor to the text. This like mix of like, science fiction and fantasy, I guess. But
What did you make of the relationship between the main guy and the scientist's daughter?
I think that was one of the things that I felt it being, that it was kind of dated, this novel, that you were, not that I find it upsetting at all or anything. It's just, that the daughter of or the granddaughter of the scientist is, kind of a love interest for the main character. And I don't know, she's just like not very present or very...
He doesn't have many lines.
No. She just kind of has this function of being the love interest, and I don't know.
The pure character.
Just like a functional character in the novel, but I mean, it might have been interesting to imagine this as just, or it would be a different novel if it was just the scientist and Saint Manu, I would say. It would be more original, like it's just like harder. It's, I think, easier to imagine what a story looks like when there's kind of a conventional, like, tension, like love interest sort of thing. But it would be interesting to imagine what other things could motivate the character's actions other than that kind of convention.
It's the typical love interest that she's pure, she doesn't do anything wrong, she doesn't speak very much, and she's and so they end up together after her dad dies, and and so basically she says, you should never try the suit on again, don't go back, or don't travel in time anymore. And he's like, yes, okay, but then I just want to do that one experiment just to check like some kind of theory. I don't remember exactly, but that's because as he times travel, he realizes that, so the mission that Noel gave him is trying to prevent some kind of a disaster event in the future. And
Ravage.
then the Ravage thing, and then he tries to he tries to modify time, and he realizes that if he modifies some details, the main timeline will remain the same. Hence, also proving that there's an underlying fate or an underlying order of events, and stronger, darker forces, or something that goes beyond humans' capability, in spite of all the scientific progress and power. And so he can't stomach that, so then he tries again to modify that, and he wants to kill Napoleon. Which is funny because you're like, he's doing World War II and he's not trying to kill Hitler, you know.
Yeah.
He just went for Napoleon.
That's true.
And like, but also, you know, for more conservative writer, trying to go after Napoleon is it is quite interesting, you know, to have that. But nothing much happens. Napoleon is not killed because a soldier sacrifices himself, and it turns out that the soldier in question was Saint Menou's ancestor, who does not meet his wife, and so then Saint Menou disappears, and so the role of the love interest here is, I think, it's critical from the perspective of the story, because you have a couple, you know that they must get back together, or they must, you know, like,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
you know, do that, but is prevented from doing it because of his own he prevents his own happiness because of his obsession with trying to disprove the fact that history is immutable.
Yeah.
Immutable. So I thought that was quite heartbreaking, you know. Even though the character of the woman, of course, is definitely underwritten and she has nothing to go for herself. But Saint Menou either, I thought, is just a regular dude, you know. He never even talks about maths. You know, he's supposed to be a math genius, and the only thing that we know about his maths is said by the other guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't say, yes, I love math. I'm doing math today. He just doesn't talk about it.
That's true. Yeah, it is kind of interesting, though, that exactly why this happens during a war, and why, why couldn't Saint Menou have just been out hiking and, come across this house in the woods? Because I don't know, I got this sense that the main character was not particularly attached to life, or that he, had been through war and seen horrors, I think, and he found a sort of this unexpected kind of warmth in this place with the scientist and his daughter. And so I guess I wasn't unsettled by the lack of math, but I kind of read into it as that his main interest in in this whole thing was pursuing this relationship, and then he kind of gets invested in the logic of the situation, but not necessarily the technical details.
Definitely. But I mean, I think what we learn from him is that he's in the war, and the times are difficult. You understand that he's going through a rough time, and we don't spend too much time in. The one character that we spend much time with in his head is the physicist. Yeah, he's the guy who leads basically the the story in terms of, yeah, we should do this because of that, and I'm thinking about the future and this and that and whatnot. Whereas Semenu is the younger character, is more he thinks about the girl pretty quickly. He's interested into the time traveling thing, but he does basically what the physicist wants him to do.
Yeah, he's pretty passive.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I don't know. I think that's still why I didn't. I think the ideas are more of the point than the characters themselves, or it's that kind of science fiction, I think, or that kind of novel where the ideas are bigger than the characters are, I guess, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But yeah, it
Yeah.
still feels kind of intimate, like these relationships. So it's not that, they're not well drawn per se, but
Also, we haven't talked about the narrator. There's a shift of narrator's point of view. The main story is basically third person narrator, and then there's a shift to Saint Menu's journal when
Yeah.
it goes into the future, and it felt a little bit gimmicky, but at the same time, it's pretty interesting to see how it goes from one perspective to the other, and when we have the third person narrator, the to have that person that tells the story and sees everything and sets up those funny passages, I really like that because it creates some sort of an understanding between the writer and the reader, and so it makes the little incongruities or the little odd moments where the story needs to have an explanation about the scientific stuff, and the narrator just says, yeah, there's that's not the narrator but a character explains something or something like that. It makes things more easy to oversee, the little mistakes.
yeah.
Because I think that's one of the problems in sci-fi, especially because there's a lot of explanations to give, but in books or fiction in general, is that it's so boring when you have to follow an explanation, unless the explanation itself is really made to be followed or something like that. But there's always that moment of oh shit, I'm just mentioned the science device and now I have to explain how that works so that the reader can have yeah and so when there's the third character, the third person narrator, it doesn't do that much. His language is very visual, very poetic, and so you don't really care about those moments where you say, okay, that's a diving suit that takes you through time. That's fine. Okay, it's just take me into the future. I'll follow you.
Huh. Yeah, that is interesting though, that why the third person narrator doesn't follow him to the... Well, because actually the section where the professor goes with Manu to the future, that's third person narrated, right?
Yeah. This one is.
Yeah, so it makes you wonder what the main perspective in the novel is, if it actually is the professor who the is there a character that's associated with that third person narrator, or who's like the anchor of the story or something?
I don't think so. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is interesting, that choice to switch over to like the journal. I mean, it could be, I don't know, it could be just like narrative variety or something. But it's also, I always think like, especially with like time travel narratives, there's some sort of self-reflexive thing about
Yeah.
narrative, because that's really the only way that we do have of like, time travel. Um, and I feel like switching from, the past tense third person narrator to like the present tense first person narrator, like these different kind of temporal
Yeah.
manipulations, are a type of time travel like within the novel. So it makes, it it makes sense that the novel would try to play with that, or at least to diversify a little bit the methods of telling.
Yeah, also like now I just grabbed the book real quick and I went through the lines. When it's Saint Manu's narrating, the language is more straightforward
Mm.
and
He's a
and
math
more
teacher.
yeah. Who apparently is not really into math, because he never talks about it. No, but it's more serious, more in tune with what's going on, and there's less, obviously less distance with what is living because it's a journal, so it's living the
Yeah.
things as they go, and it just gives I think an air of reality maybe,
Mm.
and at the same time it contributes to the parody or pastiche of scientific exploration. There's always this moment where you see like the mad scientist or the guy completely obsessed with his research having the paper and writing frantically, today, Monday morning, I woke up and
Okay,
my
yeah.
experiment didn't go as planned or something like that.
Yeah, that's funny. I'd not thought of that.
I think we're reaching the end right now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, here, let me
Do you,
we can sign off, and the video chat will still work, so.
so let's say goodbye then.
All right. Okay. See you in a second.
Yes, see you in a second.